The sheds were quiet and empty. Vick was the only engine around. He had returned early from a test train to see how he performed on the line out of Euston. All seemed to have gone well, but Vick didn't feel pleased with himself. He'd been given a cold reception from the other engines. This wasn't because they didn't like him, it was mainly due to the fact they were surprised to see another diesel engine at their sheds. They had hoped for more steam engines, but recently they seemed to be thin off the ground. This had worked wonderfully for Den, and he made his presence felt whenever Vick was alone.
"You poor engine," he would sneer pathetically. "Have they left you alone again?"
"Oh, I'm just back early," replied Vick innocently. I'm sure when they get to know me, we'll be all right."
"I wouldn't hold your breath. Steam engines care only for their own kind, or diesel engines that give in to their old backward ways. Poor Bab, she is blind to the future, and if she keeps this up, she'll be thrown out with the rest of them," said Den smugly.
"That's a bit harsh," murmured Vick. "Anyway, if they've accepted Babs, they're sure to accept me."
"Steam engines aren't as kind and caring as we diesel engines. One can only try to befriend one, but don't say I didn't warn you."
Vick thought long about what Den had said. He couldn't understand why the steam engines would reject him, but still remain friends with Babs. Den went back to shunting coal wagons. The reason for him being at the sheds was because the coal hopper was temporarily out of order, and so most of the coal had to be transferred from the wagons to the engines' bunkers and tenders by hand. Den, being the only shunter available, had to shunt the trucks wherever the crews needed them. It was a long and tedious routine, but this gave Den the opportunity to start his devious plan. He wanted the steam engines to turn against Vick, so he would seek friendship with the shunter. The more diesels that came, the more Den would add to his little colony, until at last the steam engines would be outnumbered by their rivals. It all depended on the steam engines taking a dislike to Vick.
"I know how to get the ball rolling," he sniggered to himself.
Den blocked 3 berths with the coal wagons. He knew William would return first from his commuter trains, and the only free space that was available was next to Vick. William is very opinionated and very judgmental towards newcomers, especially diesel engines. Den's plan worked like a charm when William arrived and instantly began telling Vick just what he thought of him. "You'll never abolish steam. We will live on and outlive you all," he snapped. "You sulk and moan for a fitter should you break down. You just stand there like an ugly ornament, and they have to resurrect you or resuscitate you to be brought back to life again. Steam locomotives are the closest thing to a living, breathing creature that man has ever made. But you diesels, don't get me started." "I'm afraid you already have," sighed Vick. "And there's another thing." William carried on grumbling when Den left. He was grumbling when the other engines returned. He was grumbling to Vick all night, and he was still grumbling when they all left for work the next day. Den felt very pleased when he saw William fume away. The engine seemed to look rather guilty. "We should have intervened," muttered Fred. "Poor engine having to put up with William like that," sighed Jimmy. "I know how he feels," finished Robin. Den waited to speak to Vick when all the engines had left. Vick felt very put down. He sadly looked at Den. "You were right. Steam engines aren't kind and are most definitely stuck in their own ways," whimpered Vick.
Den grinned. There, you stick with me and I'll make sure you'll be all right."
As Vick departed, the shedmaster had been watching them. "Perhaps Babs needs to be more of a role model to Vick than Den," he said to himself. As he walked away to his office, Terry steamed in. Den smiled and drew up alongside with a coal wagon.
"Tough day."
"What do you care?" huffed Terry.
"It's just that things could get even tougher around here for you now," said Den smarmily.
Terry became concerned. "What do you mean by that?" he asked, perplexed.
"Well, Vick has come over from Liverpool. His class have a stronghold up there, you see. They've taken over duties that many of your siblings used to do. Now, I'm dreadfully sorry to have to tell you this, but Vick's here to do the same to you."
"To me?" puffed Terry. The Standard 5 was beyond words. The thought of being replaced by Vick and being sent to the scrapyards was unbearable to think about.
You should fight for your right to survive, advised Den. After all, why should a perfectly healthy locomotive be thrown onto the scrap heap for something as feeble and unreliable as Vick?
As Den scuttled away, Terry thought for a while of what Den had said. He didn't want to believe it. It couldn't be true, and he knew Den couldn't be trusted. But the realization of his brothers and sisters being set aside for scrap for new, up-to-date diesel engines became too much to bear. And so that evening, when Vick came back, Terry gave him a piece of his mind at how wrong it was for his class to be given an undignified end, and how useless and less inspiring Vick's class was as a whole. Vick felt very hurt. The other engines tried to interrupt, but Terry was determined for his voice to be heard. In the end, Terry ran out of things to say, and a very defenceless Vick was left to fight off his tears. By morning, the engines didn't know what to think. They felt sorry for Vick, but weren't sure what to make of the situation.
"He's going to try and get rid of me," grunted Terry.
"Nonsense," huffed Robin. "He seems harmless to me." "Harmless?" scoffed William. "He shouldn't be trusted. He sticks close to that Den. Mark my words, they're plotting our demise. You should stay clear of that diesel." "Well, I'm going to try and talk to him," puffed Jimmy. "The poor engine mustn't know if he's coming or going." "Going, I should hope," snapped William. Later that day, Richard and Roger rolled in. Den quickly arrived with some coal wagons for their cruise. Babs was close by. She had been asked by the shedmaster to introduce herself to Vick, but due to William and Terry's outbursts it had become impossible. As she was being attended to by her driver, she witnessed Den talking to the twins. She was shocked to overhear Den lying to the two Black Fives.
"Vick's here to replace you two. Turns out one engine is better than two. Mind you, Vick is an awful locomotive, not as useful as you two. He'll never be a match for the power of the Black Fives. You should make sure he hears that."
Richard and Roger were indignant as Den scurried away triumphantly. Babs was appalled by this. She turned to her driver. "We must tell the shedmaster immediately," she cried. And when they did, the shedmaster promised to attend to the matter at once. Meanwhile, Den had been called away to help shunt coaches at the station. Jimmy was trapped in platform 3 due to broken points. Den felt very pleased with himself. "Don't get too used to this," called Jimmy crossly. "You'll be back to shunting wagons in the yard in no time."
"We'll just see about that," replied Den greasily.
As Den brought Robin's coaches to the platform, there was a sudden station announcement.
"The 1440 service to Banbury will now depart from platform 2.
"Come along," called the station master. "I want those coaches swapped over at once." Jimmy would usually do this without a fuss, but Den grumbled dreadfully.
"Why do I have to move them? It's completely pointless," he complained.
Den dawdled about for so long that Vick arrived to collect his train. He was directed onto the line which should have had his coaches, but instead he was coupled to Robin's branch line train. No sooner had the guard blown his whistle, Vick swiftly departed. Jimmy whistled for him to stop. But it was no good. As Robin backed down, he was surprised to see a long express train waiting for him. Should Vick ask about the mix-up, Den decided to put the blame on Jimmy. "This isn't right, Jimmy. What's happened here?" asked Robin. "You usually don't get this wrong." "It wasn't me, it was—" But Den was nowhere to be seen. That evening, Vick rolled quietly into the sheds. He had been flagged down before he reached the branch line. Due to his weight, Vick had embarrassingly been uncoupled from the train and Ivor took over. As he stood solemnly in the sheds, Den slithered in.
"That was an awful trick Jimmy played on you there," he began. "How embarrassing. I hope you haven't taken it to heart."
"Steam engines are horrid. I don't know how I'm going to cope here," blubbered Vick. "I just want to go home."
"I'm your only friend," smirked Den.
"Oh, no, you're not," came the thunderous reply. Richard and Roger steamed out of the sheds beside Vick. Vick held back his upset and waited for a fierce response from the twins. But to his amazement, the twins were smiling. They were followed by Babs, who was then followed by William, and then Terry. The shedmaster climbed down from the cab of William. He strolled straight to Den and pointed his finger furiously. "Who do you think you are?" he questioned. Den suddenly felt rather nervous. He quivered until at last he found his voice. "I'll tell you who you are," interrupted the shedmaster. "You're a filthy liar. You've lied to the engines so you can purposely make Vick's life a living hell. I know your game. You wanted the engines to turn against Vick so he'd come running to seek refuge and guidance of an engine such as you. You're a venomous, vindictive little shunter who bears a disgusting grudge against the other forms of traction in my shed." Den was speechless. The unusual behaviour of the engines suddenly began to make sense to Vick.
"Vick, this isn't what it seems. Jimmy, that's right, Jimmy, he shunted the wrong coaches for you to look like a fool," stuttered Den.
Jimmy steamed in just in time to hear the accusation. "I think you'll find I was trapped by broken points," exclaimed Jimmy. "There you go again," shouted the shedmaster, "lying once more. You better start hoping for a miracle that your punishment isn't half as bad as what it deserves to be. Now get out of my sight!" And with that, Den scarpered away as quickly as he could. The shedmaster then turned to his engines. "Believing in rumours and hearsay is not what I expected of you. We here are a family, and we accept one and all without being judgmental. I hope you all have learned a lesson on trust, jumping to conclusions, and above all, forgiveness." "But we can't forgive Den," snorted William. "All in good time," finished the shedmaster. He turned and walked sternly away. The engines all apologized to Vick and welcomed him to the sheds. They all felt rather hypocritical at first. They had said terrible things to Vick. But they found warming to the Metrovic easy, and began to tell them of his meeting with a famous author. At last Vick smiled happily. He finally felt like he was home. Den, on the other hand, stood sad and alone in the goods shed. For the very first time, he felt worried what the future would bring.